glasses that I wear. Oh, there we go. We're live. Distractor, how are you doing?
Good, good, good. How are you, Rob?
I'm very good, thank you. I want to thank you for joining us today. Um, I came across your art on Instagram, and Instagram is, well, the internet is such an amazing way of connecting people in positive ways. And the art that you create is totally nuanced. You make art with coffee stains, but it's not just coffee stains. You make like actual art. Like you have this picture of Van Morrison that is insane, man. So thank you so much for being on the show today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So when we were trying to figure it out time zone wise, you're in Omar, is that right?
Oman, yes.
Yes. And that's in
Oman,
the United Arab
it's in
Emirates,
the
correct?
GCC. No, it's right below Dubai. It's like
Right.
5 hour drive from Dubai, around 1,000 kilometers, we can say.
So, I mean, we did a COVID special a couple months back in March, and we talked with people all over the world about,
Uh,
their experiences with COVID, and we never got to speak to somebody from that region. So,
uh,
how are things there during this whole pandemic?
I think the COVID actually hit the country pretty bad. I mean, it hit the world pretty bad.
Mhm.
It's been a tough ride. People lost jobs, and a few of us who are a little bit more privileged could actually, afford to self isolate, and they were able to ride out the pandemic. I mean, it's still going on, but whatever ride that they've been through or we've been through, I think they've ridden through that thanks to the privilege. And the government here has actually done a phenomenal job of maintaining the lockdowns and then making sure um, all the supplies are in there. I mean, nobody had to rush to the stores or anything for food. Or and Oman also has blue collar workers, and so the government actually took a few measures to take care of them. Also, they kind of provided additional food, and there's a lot that is done on humanitarian basis, and they're also increasing jobs for locals as the new because COVID has hit local businesses and some of them had to shut shop, so the government is trying to create more opportunities for the residents so that they can get back to track on their lives.
Right. Well,
And
and mental illness has been a major theme throughout this pandemic. I mean, people in isolation and things like that. And in your art on your website, which I just included here, I'll just pop it up. But one of your focuses in your art is mental illness. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Um, to be honest, I mean, whether we accept it or not, I think every individual on our planet, or if there are other planets, they will go through some sort of a mental illness. And
Right.
some may recognize it, some may not, some might be in denial. I mean, but this particular theme I chose, one is because of the pandemic, and I'm diabetic also, and I haven't stepped out of my house for almost a year. Like literally, didn't step out of the door for a year, and it's a major revelation for myself that I'm a very outgoing person. I mean, I backpacked, I hike, and all of that, and all of a sudden, shutting shop and just sitting at home. Privileged to have a job still, but doing that made me think more along those lines to see how people are coping, and it made me connect with all my old friends. I mean, I've always been in touch with them, but this time I was able to actually spend more time talking to them, um, rebuild bridges that I've burned, and then a local gallery came up with this concept. I mean, they asked me if I want to exhibit any of my art, and I've never had a show in Oman, even though I've had shows everywhere else. And then I thought, I'm provided for right now, but so I don't need money to look after me. But if my, I mean, as I'm talking about my art in perspective, I don't need to sell my paintings for me to eat. So I have that privilege. Why don't I use this privilege to talk about mental illness? I don't care whether people buy these paintings or not, because I can afford to, buy a canvas and then play with it. And then, so initially I thought I'll just paint something Oman themed, and then like to get a little bit more traction. But then I gravitated towards this idea, and that's the other reason. And third reason was, uh, I come from a very modest background, but in my family there are very highly educated individuals who kind of took me under their wing, answered all my questions. I was a very curious boy, and my uncle, he actually curated a museum in my hometown, and then he was also a marine geologist. Sorry, so he had this innate curiosity about everything. And to give you one little example, I asked him, "How do crickets make this noise?" I was a kid, 7 years old. He
Yeah.
didn't need to answer me, or he could have just said, "Oh, they have these little I don't know what they're called. That's stupid of me, but tentacles on their feet that they move them around, and then you get so." No, no. He spent 3 days catching the cricket, figured out. I mean, this was in 1980s, so there is no internet, at least in India.
Right.
He figured out their diet, and then he waited till the night, because usually crickets make that sound in the night. So he waited till the night to show it to me, and that is how he started the whole concept of scientific curiosity in me. And since then, there was no stupid question that I could ask him. I mean, there were times we used to discuss the Vitruvian Man, or the proportions of a human body, talk about geodes and how they are formed, versus do airplanes have indicators on them when they take a left turn or a right turn. So he
Right.
used to answer that question as seriously as he used to answer my
Hmm.
serious questions. He's 85 now, and he has Alzheimer's. And it was a very, I cherished them all through my life. He is always, I like to believe that he cherished me, he cherished my questions. And during this time, I thought I should pay a tribute to him. And the only way I could do that, if I was there, I could have cooked him a meal. But then my aunt is a much better cook than I am. I mean, most of my recipes I've taken from her and her sisters. So I thought, this is one medium I have, and this is what I can do. So, and I'm like, yes, this is what I want to do. And then I thought it shouldn't be just one tribute. I should look at mental illnesses as a whole uh, thought process, and then try to express it uh, through my words. Basically, I might have gotten it right, I might have gotten it wrong. I'm not looking at whether it is right or wrong, but I'm looking at what I interpret a mental illness as.
You're demonstrating your understanding.
Yes.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's how this particular exhibition came into picture. And when I pitched this idea to the gallery, he really liked it, the gallery owner. And then we have a local royal who also is helping out in the mental illness space in Oman. She has a clinic here, and she's doing phenomenal work. She partnered with us, so she sent some of her team, and they explained the paintings. I mean, they were showing the paintings, and then they were talking about what the mental illness is, how it manifests. So it became an art show plus a tribute plus something people could learn a little bit about, and it was a great experience. And some of the paintings I did for this particular show will disintegrate. I don't know how long it's going to take, but they will
Oh.
disintegrate. And that's how I made them, so that they will disintegrate. So I don't know if somebody buys it or not. They're right now in this room, right all around.
what
Uh,
what is it made out of that it disintegrates? So like the picture will eventually, like, it's I mean, it's green. It's green art, right? Green energy. It's green art. So the painting will disintegrate. What is it made out of?
I have actually came up with a mixture of coffee and egg tempera that forms a thick layer on the canvas, but it's so brittle it starts
Oh,
breaking up.
I see.
And so it's hard to get a coffee to properly stick onto canvas. I mean, you can get like
Yeah,
few layers of it and build a layer into it, but for it to actually show the depth
yeah.
or the thickness, only egg tempera can do. So I mixed that, and now it starts going brittle slowly. And then sometimes, depending on the effect I'm going for, I expose the paintings to extreme heat. We have a desert, so sometimes I dry the paintings in the desert so that it gets the crackler texture. And sometimes in extremely salty humidity right in front of the sea. So I changed the drying medium, the way the painting dries, to get that kind of effect.
Do
And
you have an example of one of your paintings for viewers to see?
one second.
So Distractor makes paintings out of coffee stains, and he was just telling us about. Oh, wow.
This is the tribute painting. It's the Alzheimer's.
Oh,
I think you
okay.
can see. Do you see the whites in the painting?
Yes,
These are not
and then
actually.
the
This is
the
a
hole
painting.
right there.
Okay. That's a hole. Right next to the hole here, if you see, it's white in there. And I'm gonna rub off the white. That's the painting disintegrate. That it's
Wow.
not there anymore. So if I leave it, it will slowly disintegrate. And if you look closely, you can see the crackles happening there.
Yeah.
And then even the place I burnt, it's very fragile. Like if I touch that, that's
Mhm.
gonna go. So the idea is this is Alzheimer's. This is
Yes.
how
Yeah.
you have your positives that I represented in a few bits of gold and some silver, and then I used some expired varnish so that it could form like different textures in the same thing. Like you'll have to like look at the painting from close to look at the different textures. And all these textures disintegrate in a different way. So if you hang it, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 years
Right.
from now, it just disintegrates. So that's the whole concept behind this Alzheimer's painting.
Dude, that is genius. Because, like you say, I mean, Alzheimer's is our mind deteriorates over time, and this painting
Yeah.
illustrates that beautifully. Uh, I mean, beautiful in a way that it's like it's tragic too, and just how precious life is. Now, I did see some gold in there. What else did you use? Did you use anything besides coffee
Um,
to create
in
that
this one,
picture?
In this one, it's coffee, gold and silver accents. It's just acrylic gold and silver dust.
I see. Yeah.
Then I had expired varnish. That is how the whites are coming out. So what happens when varnish expires is it crystallizes a little bit.
Mm.
So I let the varnish. I just put the entire tub of varnish out in the hot Muscat sun, and I'm talking about 110 degrees. So it formed the crystallization. So one of the layer is just varnish, and once that layer is sealed, I started applying more layers of coffee. So now when it is drying, each layer dries differently. So one layer which is more viscous dries slowly, but the layer underneath it is already varnish, which dries off that way. So it starts cracking. So the
Right.
way the layer over that cracks is different. So that is how the effect comes out. I don't know, in like 5, 10, 20 years of time.
Wow.
But that is
So
how the disease manifests also, right?
how when did you develop the strategy of making art?
Making this particular art or in general
Yeah,
art in
yeah, like
general?
the coffee art. When did you start doing this? When did you come up with this technique?
Nah, this technique is not something new. It's been around for quite a while, and then there were a few articles I read where um, in people in 18th century used to use coffee to write manuscripts because that's a
Huh.
dye end of the day.
Yeah,
So
right,
they used to
right.
brew it thick and then dry it and use it as a dry.
I'm drinking some right now. I'm drinking some art.
Nah, it's already 7:30. If I drink now, I don't think I'll be able to.
You'll be up for a few more hours. Yeah. So
Fine.
this is not a new technique. This has been used before.
No, there are quite a few coffee
Yeah.
artists around, but I
Oh,
don't think there are many abstract coffee artists.
right. Right.
And yeah, so 2012, I quit my job to backpack and ride my motorcycle all across India. And after a year and a half, I was dead broke and I came home. And I thought I should visit one of my friends, and she loves coffee, and all of us met at a coffee place. So I made her portrait with coffee and went there. And she's like, "Ugh, this doesn't look like me." I took it as a challenge and then started off with basic portraits and pop art. That's where the Jim Morrison you saw.
Right.
That was from 2013, if I believe. So slowly from portraits, I just went into drawing celebrities. That's how you get likes. Apparently, I still don't understand the popularity stuff on Instagram because most of the people I follow don't have a lot of followers, but their work is phenomenal and it's been exhibited everywhere. So I'm like, okay, popularity is not for me, is what I thought.
Yeah.
But then,
That's
yeah,
which
so
is
this
smart,
what,
right? You do what you like, and
yeah,
I think that's what draws people in, because
yeah.
good art, which is actually a funny expression, good art. I mean, what is art to you, Distractor? And we have somebody who said hello here, Forgettable Vendetta. Thank you for joining us.
Okay. This is my first time doing this, so I don't know where comments come. Okay.
Oh, it's okay. You're doing great. Yeah, yeah. So what is art, Distractor?
Art is music you can see.
Hmm.
Ooh, that is no. I just saw that on Facebook this morning. A friend shared it on their profile, but that made sense to me. I think art is such a powerful medium, underutilized, powerful medium that can make everyone think. That's what I believe, at least. Because when I made my painting, I understood it, or my thoughts were in a certain way, and I can only channelize the viewer's thoughts into one direction, saying, "Hey, this is what I think." But then once the a moment a person looks at my art, they matter. I mean, they make their own thought process and stories behind it. So art is their story combined with my story that comes out and then just plays out whatever it plays out. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because one sort of philosophical question. I mean, one thing about this show is it's all about. I try to ask the big questions, but I'm not very intelligent, so I always fumble them. But anyways, it's, does the audience or does the artist create the message? And what you're saying is that they both create the message. It's a shared story, just
Yeah.
like with the Alzheimer's. I mean, if you put that up there, and it was, what is the name of that piece, by the way, the one that you're showing us? What's the name of it?
Alzheimer's.
I see. Okay, yeah.
I mean, I'm
So
not gonna sugarcoat anything. I mean,
yeah.
people, it's gory. I'm like, yeah, it's gory. That's how you
Mm.
interpret it. I interpret it as a lot of beautiful moments I spent with them. Lot
Yeah.
of I mean, when I say thick and thin layers, it's the same thick and thin that we went through life. It's what those people went through life, and then I'm just trying to represent that on a piece of canvas. If you ask me, am I doing a good job? No. That guy actually, I mean, my uncle in this instance, he had a much bigger life. He was friends with Carl Sagan, for crying out loud, and he
Carl
was,
Sagan.
yeah, he was doing research that was, I mean, in other words, I mean, Indians use this word, but that was mental. I mean, I am actually literally having goosebumps. I mean, talking about him. I mean, how many kids can, I'm not a kid anymore, but how many 37-year-olds can walk around saying, hey, I touched a moon rock? My uncle had a collection of moon rocks.
Wow.
So that kind of guy. So
Yeah.
I can't just limit him to one small canvas and say, this is my uncle. So this is Alzheimer's. This is what people will
Yes.
go. It's
Yeah.
burnt holes. Yes, it is burning holes, but what it represents end of the day is what you interpret it and what I interpret it.
And
And
I mean, that's what's so wonderful about art is some abstract art. I think there's one guy I was talking to him. His name's Jerry Fialka, and he was talking about this person who took snowshoes, put them up in an art exhibit, and then gave it some funky name. And people were like, "What is it about? What is it about?" But the reality was they were just snowshoes that he took, put up there, and then it's like he created meaning. So, but with
yeah,
your art, it's like this is Alzheimer's, and then people interpret that, and then they think, "Oh, what's the?" Because they're being led in that direction, which is the direction you want them to be led to. But then they wonder, well, what are the gold streaks? And that's where that interpretive collective story comes in.
yeah, yeah.
Is that is
And then
that is
even
no
I'm
no go
sorry.
ahead. No, please.
Even the guy who named the shoes, snowshoes, whatever they are, it's the way he has named it might have started something.
Yes,
So that would
exactly.
spark a story or a discussion in that direction, saying why did he name it that, and that's where you got the story. You can take it up.
Yes. Yeah. That was that with the title of it. If it didn't have a title, then people would be like,
Hmm.
what is this? But with the title, that creates the conversation. And I think
Hmm.
that that's what good art does is it creates conversations. There was one guy who recently sold a sculpture. Did you hear about
Yeah,
this?
the
It was an
invisible
invisible
sculpture,
it
right?
was an
Yeah,
invisible sculpture, and I think he sold it for
15 grand,
75 50.
$15,000, I think.
And I'm in the wrong business. But yeah,
Yeah,
Italian
got that
sculpture.
too.
Italian artist auctioned off an invisible sculpture for $18,300.
Okay.
It's made literally of nothing. But what he did, I'm just gonna add that right here. What he did is he created a conversation. People are like, "This isn't art," but then it brings up, "Well, what is art?" Right?
Exactly.
And you've answered that question. I mean, so beautifully in your work. Now, tell us again about the process, because what I think is so wonderful about it is how clean it is. You were talking about you roast the coffee and then what you do with it. It's not like you just throw it in the garbage. You use it. So
No,
tell us a little bit about the process of making this art.
it depends on what the end effect I'm looking for, actually.
Right.
If it is a simple painting, like I made a replica of Guernica right here.
Whoa, that's coffee?
Yeah,
Dude, that's insane. Can you bring that a little closer if that's possible?
this is Picasso's Guernica,
Holy
and I
shit,
just
man.
made a replica of it, and I didn't even want to frame it because how do I improve upon a masterpiece all the time? I personally think I improved by not framing it. And if you
Mm,
see the canvas is not uniform, it's just a
yeah,
piece. And then the borders are not the same. The way I cut it is haphazard, and then all the things are coming out. So why did you do this? I mean, like since he painted it in the 1920s and we are in 2020, what has changed? This is the same shit we are still in. I'm sorry, language.
oh no. Hey, this is uncensored, my friend.
Oh, okay, all right,
Speak
much better.
freely. Yeah.
Much better.
Speak.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
what has changed? So
Hmm.
for something like
Hmm.
that, since I'm more thinking more along the lines of concept, it doesn't matter how I brew my coffee, so that I use instant coffee because the concept is there, the story is there. I'm just telling it, so it doesn't matter how I say, because
Yeah.
we have people from non-English speaking countries making movies, and then the movies are, winning Oscars in an English speaking country. So the medium is there. I just didn't bother. And something like a piece like Alzheimer's, for this I actually used a mix of expired coffee and regular coffee. Brew it into a very thick. I reduce the coffee on the stove. I mean, it's sad to look at good coffee go burning because the smell changes. And
Right.
then I leave it out in the sun for like 2 to 3 days, and then it forms a little viscous liquid, and then I start painting with that. And if it is with egg tempera, I mix it up with one egg white, egg yellow, with the exact quantity of water and sometimes vinegar uh, if I want it to hold the color better. And then I keep cutting that with coffee and paint with that. But at tempera, I need to work very fast because it dries
Mhm.
super fast. So I just need to know where I want it, how I want it, where I want it thick, and all of that. And so that's one more. And sometimes what I do, I just spray my canvas with water and then just throw the coffee up in air. It just falls it wherever it falls. And then I keep introducing water every half hour. So I literally brew a coffee on my canvas so that the coffee beans slowly release the color. I mean, coffee, but color in my sense. And then sometimes I introduce additional coffee beans, or sometimes like a few dabs of instant coffee, or sometimes I try to blow on it. Sometimes I just leave it out in the sun so that the way the parts of coffee dries changes. So
I mean, wow. I wish you could do. I don't know if you see our logo up there on the top right, but yeah, right with the wolf in there. It's like, oh man, how much would it be to do a picture of that in coffee?
let's take that off.
So do people buy your art from your and like from all over the world?
Yes, I've been fortunate that way. I think, except in Antarctica, I have my art everywhere. At least two paintings in per continent. Uh, my portraits were well sought out for quite a while, and after that, I just uh, stopped doing portraits unless it is something very touching or some NGO is trying to do some good work. I mean, good work in my books, not in their books, because more or less NGOs spend like 60-70% of funds they get on salaries and shit. So stuff like that. And recently, I've done a portrait. This is somebody I know. Their father-in-law passed away before they could actually see the baby. He had a baby. So they asked me to come up with a concept where the father-in-law and the baby are together. So that was a challenge because all I had was a low resolution picture of the father-in-law's face. So I had to watch videos of their wedding video and then just try to see his mannerism, how his fingers look, and all of that, and came up with a portrait. So if there is a story behind it, I work with people. General abstract art, to be very frank, out of 14 paintings I made for this mental illness exhibition, only two were sold. I'm not actually bothered about selling, but yeah, they've been around. And somebody, I think, asked a question: what brand of coffee do you use?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a guy who actually sent me that civet coffee from Indonesia to paint their portrait. So for that, I
Mm.
used that. If you're practicing instant coffee, I mean, I believe in not wasting resources. And I don't know, there's no better word other than cheap. I mean, the cheaper the better. I mean, all my brushes are same. My The brush I pestered my father to buy like 25 years ago, I still use the same brush for painting. So yeah, any brand usually works.
Yeah, and with the grinds afterwards, you're saying that you use that in your garden. So it's
Yeah,
almost like this is a zero waste form of artwork.
almost, because sometimes if I, I mean, for this exhibition there was so much waste generated that I couldn't put all in the garden because the pH levels change.
Right,
I
right, because the
accepted
acidity of the coffee. Yeah.
Yeah. But one other good way to use them is to introduce mushroom spores and actually grow mushrooms in them. We don't have get. I didn't try growing mushrooms in Oman, but in general, coffee
Oh,
waste is used to grow mushrooms. They retain that moisture well, so the spores can grow faster. Is what I was told. I need to experiment on that, but yeah.
I might have to get into mushroom farming then.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of mushrooms you're talking about,
Well,
but yeah.
yeah. Well, yeah, maybe the fun kind. I don't know, but yeah. So, well, I mean, that's so awesome, man. So your art, it's not just mental illness. I mean, you've done portraits, um, abstract art. Like I've always, the name itself suggests like, what exactly is abstract? How is abstract art different from regular art? And my understanding is that it's highly interpretive. It's far more interpretive than say traditional art, as in this is the picture, look at the valley, look at the mountains, so on and so forth. What exactly is abstract art?
Exactly what you said. It's all about how you interpret a painting. I mean, there were paintings where people looked at it and like a baby could do it. What exactly is special in that? I mean, that is exactly what is special. A baby could do it. So for a 30, 40, 50-year old to channelize the inner baby in them to come up with that is a journey in itself. I mean, you don't need to buy it, or you don't need to what should I, extol its virtues or anything,
Mhm.
but you just need to just appreciate art and then move on to the next painting. I mean, if you look at, I mean, I'm gonna sound pompous and everything, but I did go through Monet's paintings of the lilies, and uh, that thing was not even one of the paintings I saw was not even larger than 15 inches, like your laptop screen. The details he snuck into that, you go close, that becomes an abstract art. You go back from the painting,
Oh,
that is a landscape. I mean, I thought that's how you can actually describe abstract art, I guess. Because one of my mentors, when I was afraid of abstract art, and initially I also was under the impression that it's not too hard.
hmm.
But I personally feel abstract art is a little harder than making a portrait, because if I get a portrait up to 95%, I know the client is going to be happy. I mean, I
Hmm.
need the additional 3% if it's not 98. I mean, I have my own this thing fighting with. But with abstract art, you don't know when to stop. You don't know what
Ah,
is enough.
yeah,
What if I put a couple of extra strokes? What happens? Nothing happens, because at the end of the day, the viewer, the enthusiast wouldn't know that you put an
yeah.
extra stroke there, but you know,
Right,
you know what it
right.
is, and how are you going to take that, and then
Mm.
is that extra stroke going to motivate you to put less brush strokes in your next painting, or is it going to say, I got away with one extra stroke, what if I put 10 more? I think abstract art is something that actually pushes you to think more, maybe, and then it motivates you to have that inner conversation.
Yeah, because sort of what I'm picking up from what you're saying is sort of the boundaries and the finite and the infinite. And in a portrait where you're drawing a picture of somebody, it's obvious where the boundaries lie. Like, okay, here it is. Here's the shoulders, here's the face, ears, eyes, so forth. Abstract art, it's like you get that last stroke in, and then the viewer looks at it, and it's like, how do they know what the last stroke was? The moment when you're like, I'm done, ta-da, right? And then you're talking about the inner child. And there's a book that I'm reading right now, the Tao, which is ancient philosophy, ancient Chinese philosophy. And it's Tao talks about, well, what is Tao? And anything that you can explain isn't Tao. Like that's the opposite. So it's like a book of 5,000 words, but it's essentially saying that nothing is everything and everything is nothing. And you're like, what? WTF does that mean? Right. And then it's saying about getting back into that inner child. And that's where, I mean, that's perhaps the Tao doesn't necessarily say this, but this is my interpretation, because it's highly interpretive, is that getting back into that inner child, that's what peace is. That's what serenity is. That's what enlightenment is. And when you had your uncle, when you were talking to him and you said, well, how do crickets make noise? And instead of saying, well, they flick their wings together or whatever, he said, well, let's observe. And that's wisdom. But what's interesting is that everything and the nothing is in us at all times. Eternity and the end is happening right now.
Yeah.
And the old person, the elder in us already exists within us, and the child already exists within us.
Yeah.
All things already exist. Perhaps we just haven't got to that point yet.
Yeah. Perfectly put. Yeah.
Yeah, and but that's sort of why art is so amazing, is because it's like we are creating things that, again, are creating conversations. And I think it's what's progressing humankind. I mean, what's the oldest form of art that you know of? For me, it's the cave paintings in France. Why did the people back then, however many thousands of years ago, why did they put that up there?
That would be a very interesting. I actually asked myself the same question while I was walking through those tombs of Egypt. I mean, there were a few places where they were like perfectly preserved. And then at that moment, the question I asked me was, when the guy was actually painting, the guy or a girl, I don't know. I mean, at that time, I was told that they did discriminate a lot. And apparently, the most society was matriarchal. You know why they prospered now, prospered then,
Yes.
right? And you know why we are in our situation right now. Anyway, conversation for a different time. But that's when I thought, I mean, does these people know when they're making it that 2,000-3,000 years later, a dumbass artist from India is gonna look at it and is gonna go, "Wow, how did they do this?" And all of the art in Egypt, most of it is abstract, or at least that's what we are supposed to believe because we don't know how to interpret those symbols.
Yeah.
So yeah, what you said is exactly what I think I felt when I was touring Egypt.
Wow. Yeah. Because we see things through our lenses now, but the lenses, even though we have the same glasses, like these glasses that I'm wearing, someone 3,000 years ago, they could have used and been like, oh, okay, I see things better. But yet their interpretation of the world is completely different than my interpretation of the world. So their art, like you're saying, had a completely different interpretation. Yet we're still interpreting this art as, like, some of us think, oh, these pyramids, it means there was aliens. Like, oh, that's fucking crazy, right? And it's like, well, maybe that's not what it meant, but that's our interpretation, right? And that's what you said with what is art, who defines the meaning of art.
Yeah,
And it's a shared story. It's something that's always building upon itself.
definitely.
Wow. Yeah. You definitely made me think about, yeah, like what. So who is your favorite? This is a tricky question, and you don't have to say one, but what artist has influenced what you create?
Leonardo da Vinci, without two thoughts. This again, so this uncle of mine I was talking about, he has a friend who happens to be my mother's brother. he His is a different kind of inspirational story, but he gave me a book while I was, I think, 9 or 10. It's called How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci. And that's not a long read or anything, but it's a very interesting read. It all talks about why Leonardo was thinking about what he was doing at that time. Why was he dissecting birds? Why was he asking butchers to show the musculature? Why was he designing the helicopter? I mean, the helicopter design we have right now is almost similar to what he
Identical,
has
yeah.
designed then. And then I think that has prompted me kind of to become an engineer. And then yeah, he's I think he is a major influencing figure in my life till now. And when I went to this Louvre, and then I saw, I mean, people were going gaga over Mona Lisa. We had to go there and say hi, I mean, because it will be complete injustice if I don't go there. But John the Baptist, not one person was in front of John the Baptist. And I was closer to the painting than I am than to my screen right now that day. And I was like looking at it, looking at the brush strokes, and I'm like, this actually Leonardo did that.
Yeah.
And people, my wife is like, okay, I understand it, but this is too much. 1.5 hours in Louvre, I was in front of John the Baptist, and I couldn't get enough.
I'm looking up a picture of Leonardo and John. Yeah, because and that's actually, the face is quite similar to Mona Lisa in that picture. Pointing up,
there are
right?
so many what do you call theories where they say Leonardo just what do you call painted
Use
a
the same
female
model.
version of him in the Mona Lisa, and then his face structures usually are. But I think Leonardo personally, at that time, he was actually working with cadavers and then trying to study human proportions. That is the reason he got the proportions same in all of that. Or he was known to be a trickster. So I don't know if he's tricking a future generation into thinking whatever we are thinking right now. So yeah, I like to believe the second one because trickster Leonardo is much more fun, and I can associate with him much more.
Dude, that's such a crazy point, because you're saying that he's he's painting this picture. He's like, I'm gonna completely fuck with people and not say who Mona Lisa is. They're gonna be, who's Mona Lisa? And it's like, that's 500 years later. Well, I think it's almost 500 years later, and they still have no idea who it is. And books have been written. What was that one, that super famous one, Angels and Demons or whatever, the Da Vinci Code? And Leonardo is like, hey man, I'm gonna make this guy millions of dollars by making a book that's a complete conspiracy theory of what my art was about. Right? Yeah. But it is very, and the interesting thing about that John the Baptist painting that I was just looking up, which I wasn't super familiar with, but it's very androgynistic. Like, it's sort of like, is it male? Is it female? And these are the conversations that we're having today. I mean, what is masculine? What is feminine? I mean, really, what are those concepts?
I think it should all be more fluid too. I think it also makes life more easier if everything is more fluid, right?
Yeah.
So when they say pronouns and all of that, I'm like, why did we take so long to recognize all of that?
Yeah. Your choice of pronouns doesn't affect, it really doesn't. Why should it affect me? Right? Why do we have to get all bent out of shape? Like, if that's what you want, then I respect that. As long as we respect each other, right?
That's it.
And I think that at the time, in Leonardo's time, a lot of divisiveness and atrocity was waged over religion. Now it's being waged over identity and culture. And that's why, perhaps, I mean, here I am, I'm just shooting out of the top of my head like a unicorn, but that's why it's still relevant, is it's like, we're still not able to get along with each other over really benign things when you think about it.
Totally. I mean, I think, I don't know who, but that certain set of people want to have some sort of a controlling power on the lesser masses.
Yes, I agree.
I think that's the best, I mean, a decent way to explain religion and other things that I don't want to get into controversy for, but yeah.
Oh, no. Well, hey, trust me, I am no, the name of the show is, I'm probably wrong about everything. But again, in the Tao, I mean, here's the weird thing, is that everything just, the more that you read, the more that you experience, the more it really does start to come together, in the sense that nothing comes together. It's all completely individualistic, right? Yeah. And we're trying to form schemas. Sorry, go ahead. No, please.
No. Adding on to that, I kind of quit reading books because it's been almost 6 or 7 years, other than college textbooks. It's more or less, I couldn't read, because the more I read, the more I know that there is so much more to read. And that kind of like, okay, no, that's gonna be a major disappointment if I die without reading all the books. When I say all, I mean all. So I'm like, I'm gonna go with my knowledge and try to improve it from life. Let's see where that takes us.
Well, and in the Tao, you're right. That's what it talks about. It's like all words, like all words are just tricks. right? They're just tricks. They're just agreements that we've made. Like I'm gonna call that a cat or whatever. I'm gonna call this that or they're agreements that we've had to make so that we can move on as a society. But really, they are constructions. So much like what is objective truth and what is subjective truth, and that again is one of the fundamental questions that art wrestles with. Forgettable Vendetta said, "We invent words for ease of communication more than to respect somebody." And you're right. I mean, this is what this means to me. This is what Christianity means to me. And then it's, like, again, if Jesus came, he'd be like, "What the fuck are you guys doing?" I don't think he would say that, but anyways, he'd be like, "What are you guys doing? You're fighting over the same thing. Read my book," or whatever. But it's true is that we're so pedantic. That's the word I'm looking for. Pedantic is that we're so focused on whether someone's right or wrong in the usage of what they're saying, and they're not understanding them. And that's why your art is so amazing, because people are like, they're scratching their heads going like, what is this about? And maybe that's the inner trickster in you, is that maybe you don't want people to know what it's about.
Let's see.
Oh, so of all your work, your body of work, what one are you most proud of, would you say? Or is there one that you can say you're most proud of?
My next painting. That's abstract, right? No,
I love it.
there is one I'm almost proud of. That thing took me 2 years to paint. And again, that also will disintegrate. But that is basically, there are so many names to it. I call it life as we know it. Sometimes I call it light at the end of the tunnel, or sometimes I call it hope. Because when I moved to Oman, I just got married. It's just been 5 months, and this was a sudden change. And I was away from my wife for almost 6 months. And then at that time, I didn't know what to do, and I thought, how do I document this, or should I document this? All I did was I took a very small painting, very small canvas, and then applied my first layer and just let it be. And for some reason, I thought it was important to take it along with me back to India when I was visiting. And that just came with me from India to Sri Lanka. Then we went to some other country, Vietnam. And then I came back to Oman. So it went to different countries with me, and finally my wife joined me 7 months later. And then when I saw the painting, it's taking some shape. So I just let it go because my wife is with me. That painting is not relevant to me. And I thought, let me see what will happen to it. And I just left it in Oman sun outside. There was rain, there was gust, there was winds and everything. A year later, the painting started to take shape. It was changing the way it looks. And then is when I added layers, and then I did the same thing. When we used to go camping very frequently in the Omani desert, take the painting there and leave it. So some sand just falls on it. I need to know the actual location so that I can retrieve it. Wow. So finally, 2 years later is when when the painting is. I thought it was done, and that's the paint. And then I know that painting is going to disintegrate because I didn't actually use a traditional painting methods to paint it, and I exposed it to all the elements all the time. So that is why I call it life, because you don't know when it's gonna go, but you know that it's going to go. So that's one painting I'm actually very happy about. Not proud, happy. Proud,
Do you have?
It's actually downstairs, so I'm trying to look for it on my phone. It was on
Whoa.
It's actually a small painting. Then what I did was, I actually did a mistake. You see the rectangle form in that? That's actually a piece of paper that got stuck on coffee. and I removed it, and then it formed that shape. I mean, I had to remove the entire thing, and then I'm like, no, I'm not gonna remove it. I'm gonna give it a gold. I mean, gold treatment, because I mean, now I'll tell you the reason I call it hope, because whatever you see in gold is the route you wanted to take. But whatever happened, the road less traveled or whatever it is the coffees that you see. So there you go. It was supposed to be in the one-way straight, but it went that way, and then your life went that way. So this is also hope for me.
Dude, that is what. Okay, so the fact this ghost hand said there's always restoration processes. Just don't make like that one Jesus scroll. And I think that that's also so important in this metaphor is, and talking about classical art, like who painted the Sistine Chapel?
Michelangelo.
Michelangelo, thank you. And he used the egg wash or whatever, and
Yeah,
it's chipping
tempera,
away.
yeah.
And it's like we're fighting to preserve that, but it's like that's how we are with Earth. We're fighting to preserve ourselves.
And
We're
do you
not all,
think we are fighting to preserve Earth?
yeah,
No,
yeah,
man. The effort is so underhanded. I mean, I wish people put in more effort, because, I mean, there's another. This
mm-hmm.
is the engineer in me, whatever. Because
Yeah,
if you look at the way evolution has been going on, any species that is a threat to Earth gets eliminated.
sharks, yeah,
Dinosaurs, and I mean, there is survival of the fittest. That's a different thing. But then when you look at major species, we are looking at dinosaurs, and we are looking at taking just a dinosaur maybe as example. They became too much for Earth, and then they were eliminated. I mean, how they were gone is a different.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, they're now
Earth, yeah,
needs to. I think coronavirus is along those lines, trying to get rid of. I mean, it's
yeah.
sad, but I don't know. I think that's where it's going, because
It's inevitable, right? But mankind, excuse me, humankind, we are so anxious that we want to control everything. The idea of like Greenpeace and stuff like that. George Carlin makes a joke about it, but it's like the Earth doesn't give a shit. When we're gone, it's just gonna keep doing what it does, and then another squid people are gonna rise up or something. But I do think that that's such an amazing metaphor for life, that these paintings disintegrate. I mean, was that intentional? Was that the like, did you want that to be a metaphor, or did you just kind of stumble upon that?
no,
And what does that mean to you?
some of them are intentional, like the Alzheimer's painting and the life
Yes.
painting. Both of them are intentional, because that's the cold, hard truth. I mean, I haven't made peace with it yet. I wake up in cold sweat whenever I actually
Yeah.
think of that. Then what will happen? Blah blah blah. What was I doing before 1983? I mean, I have no recollection. I'm like, idiot,
Yeah.
you weren't born then. So what happens? How are things there? So that's a different thing always in my head. But yes, this was totally intentional. That's the reason I use these unconventional material.
Well, I mean, with life and Alzheimer's, you provoke people. Well, I don't know if provoke's the right verb, but
I want to provoke people.
evoke, provoke. I think evoke is a little bit more like, oh, right,
Evoke.
because yeah,
I
but
want to
maybe it
provoke
is
them.
provoke. Yeah,
No, I
yeah.
want to provoke them, because
Life is a
evoke.
blessing, man. It's a privilege to be alive, right? Some
I
have
wish
more
people
privileges than
understand that.
others, of course. Yeah.
I wish people understand that, because I mean, going back to provoke and evoke, I can evoke a feeling, I can evoke motivation in you, but working on that motivation or pursuing it further is all on you. But if I provoke you,
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually hitting you in spots that will make you work towards it. So that's the reason I always go by Distractor even after all these years.
Yeah.
And that's the reason I want to provoke people. I mean, before I actually the show started, one of the journalists was interviewing me here in Oman, and he asked me, "Oh, your paintings have negative connotations. Do you think people are going to buy them?" I don't fucking care if they don't buy. No, the idea is to remove that concept that it is a negative aspect. It is not. It is a mental disorder. Just like you have headache, you have a mental disorder. It's. If you ask me, it's worse than a headache or a fever. You go through it. Your caregivers go through it. People who love you have to see you disintegrate, and they go through it because that will start their emotional journey from there.
Right.
So yeah, that interview, maybe you have some disorder too. I'm like, I may have, I may not have. That doesn't actually come into picture when we talk about it. If you want to ask me about it, yeah, that's a different conversation we can have.
Right.
So it's yeah.
Well, and to your point, when I was thinking of mental illness, and Ghost Hand just said there's a beautiful album called Everywhere at the End of Time, where each track is more degraded than the
I've
last
heard
one
of
in order
this.
to stimulate the feeling of dementia.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's like one of my next. I mean, since it came up, I'm gonna say my next concept is to actually have a audio visual experience. So where you can, I'm trying to figure out if I could paint and then make that into a 3D painting. And then people are gonna wear a VR headset and experience the painting while music is played to them. So the way you experience the painting is going to completely change. And the next level is to actually pair it with some sort of food and then have that experience so that it's going to I don't know when I can I need a grant or something like that for it. So your audience has some sort of a curator who's willing to sponsor that. It's going to be a very interesting project. But yeah.
That's awesome, man. Well, as you were speaking, there's two things that came to mind, and I think that there's two different ways of, well, there's many different ways of living, but here in Western society, we wrestle with two different ways, and I think one is consumerism, the accumulation of stuff to distract ourselves, whatever it may be. You know, I got all these books in the background that you can see. That's a pretty good distraction. There's consumerism, and then there's the actual like living your life, the experiential part of your life. Thank you, Mitch. Someone's just saying that the audio sounds better. It was a little tinny before I got a better mic, but anyways. And there's two things that stick out in that. So two stories. One story was I saw this video, and it's about 30 seconds long, and it's all this garbage and stuff, just detritus everywhere in this big white room full of like articles of clothing, books, etc., etc. And it's called The Breath, I think it is. And you hear a guy go, ah, and then scream, and you're like, holy shit, what the fuck? I don't know if you've heard of this. And then the other story that comes to mind, and yeah, it's amazing. I can't seem to find it on the internet, but it's like very existential. And then the other story, I was in the Harrison Hot Springs, and there was this guy there from Eastern Europe, Romania to be precise, and we're having a conversation, and he says to me, life is like a flower. He said, life is like flower. When it blooms, enjoy it. And I was like, oh, because so much of our lives, we run around chasing things that really don't fucking matter. And he's saying that life only blooms for a brief moment. Enjoy it. And that's what your paintings evoke, provoke, is that we don't have, in this form, we're not here forever.
Yeah. True, man. Totally. Like
Last
I remember
question.
No, nothing.
No. You remember. Sorry for interjecting. Go ahead.
No, I studied in the US. I studied in University of Utah, and that's when one of those days I think I was having a conversation late in the night, 2:30 or 3 in the morning after a motorcycle ride, just sitting on the street and talking about it. And I got time to do this. Now looking back, it's been 13 years. I'm like, fuck, 13 years went that way. And it's gonna be that by the time I'm gonna be 50, and then that by the time I'm gonna croak. So what you said is like, it's perfect. Life is too short. People think life is too long, but no.
No, man.
There's so many things to do, so many things to experience. So many people to meet, so many people to, I don't know, love or leave, both.
Distractor,
There's so little time.
you have said it so well, my friend. Thank you so much for your time. Last question. What made you decide the name Distractor?
This name is almost as old as me. I Another uncle comes into picture now, and this is actually like one of my favorite uncles. He lives in US. He's a doctor. He's a professor also in Texas. Amazing guy. My one of my role. I have 6 role models, and he's one of them.
Hmm.
He was preparing for his medical exams. He need to give that exam to get into medical college, medical school, med school. So he was staying with us for a long period of time, and I was a year and a half old, and I am a very, very, very energetic child. You see, Mask, the movie Mask, the way the
Yeah.
baby just that is exactly me. And Mask is one of my favorite movies. I mean, Jim Carrey is a different level altogether, and you should check out his abstract art. So this uncle of mine, he's the one who named me actually also. And then he said, "Oh, this fellow is such a distraction. Why are you such a distractor?" And in his break, he taught me, "What's your name?" I'm like, Distractor. So that's always been. So I stopped saying my name is Dheeraj, and I started saying I'm Distractor since I'm a year and a half old. And then when I started my art, that is what I thought. I've always been different. I'm not a typical Indian per se. So I'm like, let me go back to my roots. And when I went back to my root, I went back totally, completely back. So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
that's how Distractor has come. And then yeah, I thrive in chaos. I try to create chaos because there's always a pattern in chaos that people miss. If you can hold that pattern, I think. So I try to create chaos so that people can look at some sort of a pattern in there.
Well,
Hopefully.
perhaps chaos is nature, and that we just attribute
Yep.
values. I mean, values are created ultimately, right? Good, bad, evil, and different, all these things. But nature is nature, and chaos is chaos. And
Yes.
culture is creation, and culture is society, right? So,
Perfectly put. Yeah.
Distractor, thank you so much for your time. We have to, I have to have you back on the show. I mean, I always say this, but
Oh,
I am so blessed and privileged and honored to meet
the
and
honor
speak
is
with
all mine.
people. Well, it the feeling is mutual, my friend. Thank you so much. So keep
Special.
doing what
Thank
you're
you, man.
doing. Keep being different.
Definitely.
Any last words for our audience here? Any encouragement, anything like that?
No, I'm not good with that. Follow my work. I think that is where I'll challenge your thoughts. And if you have good ideas about what direction I should take my art or what other controversial topics can paint
Mm.
about, I'm actually thinking of doing something about nudity, but I need some mental peace to get there. But I'm more open to ideas, or I want to improve on my mental health artwork. So if you have stories, share your stories so that I can make something on that, a tribute to your story, and then a song that particular person might likes, and we can start with the experiential exhibition right there. Anything. My Instagram, just a comment. I am very active there. I mean, mostly active, but I read everything. So
Wonderful. What is the Instagram again? It's Distractor, correct?
a distractor with double A, Distractor.
All right. Thank you so much for those listening. Thank you for joining us. You can follow us on YouTube at I'm Probably Wrong About Everything. Type that in, subscribe, like, share this with friends and family. Once again, this was Distractor, the coffee stain artist. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
remember, I'm probably wrong about everything.